Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson, and I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction Renovation magazine. This is what it used to look like. I'm breaking out the archives. This is January, February 2014. Have the finish line on here. It looks like I got Matt Poski, Norman Adiz, and Merrick Reynolds, construction project manager, on the cover. Thanks, gentlemen, for gracing the cover. This was another great looking issue. Let's see what I was doing. Oh, I got my lacrosse thing going on here. I'm on the field. Someone caught me there playing attack. Got my DU shorts on, but always like looking at the magazine. You know, we went digital completely August of 2021, but it's so nice still to look and see what I was doing. And I have my helmet on there, but I probably don't have as much hair as I have. You know, I had a lot more hair then than I do now. So it's just going really quick. But other than that, I hope everybody had a great Labor Day weekend. I sure, you know, it goes so quick. I could have used it another couple days, but the one day off was nice. And hopefully you had good, you know, some time off, recharge your battery, positive mindset, and get ready to go into the fall season and finish the year out with momentum. And get ready for the new year. You know, it's just amazing how time flies. I mean, it was just January. I was ringing the new year, and here I am in the beginning of September, and it's just amazing how time goes so quick. I think as you get older, you don't sleep as much, but I'm just amazed at how quick this year has gone, and it's been an exciting year. I mean, at the end of every day, I'm just mentally drained from everything that I've done, watched, listened to, and it's just been an exciting time to be alive. There's just so much going on in the world. And, in the commercial construction center, listen, everybody's busy. If they had more PMs and superintendents, we'd probably do more projects and there'd be more cranes up in all the cities. But everybody I talk to, it's just amazing how busy they are and what a great year it's been and how well they did last year. And everybody's pretty much bullish, on next year. And I think I am too. It's just, I think a lot of people are, just taking one day at a time, but they're staying positive. And it's just been an exciting time. College football just started out, and congratulations to Deion Sanders. You know, everybody counted him out. He was way, way down. You know, I think they were 20-point underdogs coming, with his son from, the HBCU, league. And here they went in and they went on the road and they beat TCU. That was the national championship against Georgia. Everybody counted him out. I did not. If I was going to Vegas, I would have placed a bet on that guy. And sure enough, they pulled it off. And so congratulations. The guy, look, I went to the University of Denver, so CU was my arch rival, but you know what? I was pulling for the Buffaloes, and it was really exciting to see them win. And I'm sure it was crazy up there in Boulder that night, and I'm sure in Denver too. He played here for the Falcons, and then he went to the Niners. And listen, the guy's an amazing coach, an amazing individual, just a supreme athlete, and it was just exciting to see him win. So. And I remember those days when the Buffaloes weren't that great before they even changed their colors when they were blue and gold way back when I was out there. We used to play lacrosse on that field. So I remember it, those days. But Nebraska would come in, all those teams, and they would just laugh at Colorado. And then they had some good years, McCartney, and it's been kind of that cycle. But Deion Sanders, congratulations, way to go. So with that said, on that positive note of winning, got a person in one of my favorite cities, the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. His name is Mr. Scott Smith, and he's with You First Real Estate Infinity, and he's out by the Denver Tech Center. So Scott, say hello to our listeners out there on Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
Hey, nice to see everybody. And David, thanks a lot for having me on today.
No, we really appreciate you finding the time. And the reason why I had Scott on was, it's just always good to get a perspective of people from different parts of the country and, what he sees going on, et cetera. He's on that real estate sector. And, even though I'm in construction, everything is tied to real estate, because if you don't have leases, you don't have locations, you don't have sites picked out, you can't build anything or renovate anything. So it's always good to have that perspective from that real estate side of things, because everything is tied to the hip. believe it or not. Depending on how brands are set up internally, it's always good to get that perspective. So today, Scott, the way we do our episodes, I do them in 3 parts. You'll tell your story, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you ended up where you are today. And then we'll talk about the last 3 years, lessons learned of the roller coaster that we've all gone through. And then one positive thought or phrase and your contact info so people can reach out to you and bump some questions off you. And then we'll close it out. So with that said, the floor is yours. Tell us your story, Scott.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so I grew up in a little bit different environment. My dad worked in the oil field, so I was born in Phoenix, and then moved to Alaska. We lived in Alaska for a short time. After Alaska, we moved to Ecuador. So I lived in Ecuador for a couple of years. After Ecuador, we moved to Iran. And so we were actually evacuated from Iran in 79, about a month before the hostages were taken. My dad has kind of a unique story. He stayed back to shut down a rig, and Khomeini's forces actually came through that rig looking for Americans, and he was hidden in a closet by some of the guys that he worked with, narrowly avoided being caught, and made it home. It was a crazy time. I was young. I mean, I was born in 73, so at that time I was 6 years old. I've got vague memories of, Otis, my dad's company, putting us on a Lear jet in the middle of the night, kind of leaving everything we owned. After we left Iran, we lived in Brunei for a few years, so on the island of Borneo, and saw the Sultan's palace with the gold roof. Spent vacations in Singapore. Very lucky kids. When we left Brunei, we lived in Australia, and so was in Australia till about the 6th grade, and that's when we moved back to just outside of Houston to what was a little town back then. Now it's kind of a bigger city in Pearland, Texas, and that's where I went to high school. Could not stand the weather in Houston, Texas. Lots of bugs, lots of humidity. So I joined the Army to get out of Houston and went to Fort Benning to do basic training as an infantryman.
We know it well down here, Fort Benning. We know it well.
And it's not even Fort Benning now. Now it's something else. I don't even know what it is now. But went to attempt to go to Ranger Battalion after I graduated airborne school. Failed the swim test, basically drowned in that pool, and ended up on worldwide assignment. Ended up in Italy for 2 years, which was fantastic. From like 92 to 94, and then went to Fort Bragg to be part of the 82nd Airborne Division for a couple of years. Bounced around a little bit after that, and that's when I ended up in Denver. Started a small mortgage company in the mid-2000s, and in 2008 went through what a lot of people went through in 08, 09, which is losing everything you owned. And then about 6 years ago, got back into real estate and have just been absolutely loving it.
What division, before you went to Ranger School, et cetera, what was your specialty, at the Army that you learned?
Yeah, so I was an infantryman.
You're infantry. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was a paratrooper, falling out of planes and shooting at people. Although back then I got lucky. I mean, we supported the Rwandan Revolution when I was in Italy. So we deployed to Uganda, lived in an airplane hangar for a few months while I don't know how much you know about the Rwandan Revolution.
Oh no, listen, I come from a military family, so I'm pretty up on everything. So go ahead.
Yeah, it happened all in about 24 hours. We were there a few weeks later. We ran humanitarian missions into Rwanda, but mainly we just lived in an airplane hangar. And I mean, there was a lot of death there for a long time. It was a very sad event. If you ever want to know about it, watch the movie Hotel Rwanda. It tells a really good depiction of that story.
I always tell people that, if they have kids and you don't know what they're going to do, they don't know what they want to do, go join the military. You get a roof over your head. You get 3 square meals a day. You learn a trait. You learn leadership. You learn just about in general in life, you learn a lot about yourself. And then, depending if you stay in or when you get out, you're just so much more marketable. And thank you for your service, first of all, number one. But number two, what an amazing story of all the places that you lived in over the years. Even though it must have been hard jumping from place to place, but you just saw so many different types of places around the world. It just must be been an amazing ride, looking at all of those things. And thank God your father was hiding in the closet, and he kept quiet and he didn't sneeze or anything, because I was born in '63, so I'm like, I've got a few years on you. But I remember when that whole thing went on with and then the Iran-Contra gig, and all the stuff that went on, and all the politics, and the this and that. But the like I said, military. My grandfather was an engineer underneath Patton in World War II, so he went back and built all the bridges that the Allies bombed during the war, and then was in the rebuilding of Europe afterwards. And I grew up putting up the flag in the morning and at night, taking it down, doing the ceremony, putting it out. And so I anybody that went in the military, I don't care what it could have been, whatever branch that you were in, even Coast Guard or reserves. I don't care what it is. Thank you for your
I will tell you, the Coast Guard is America's best kept secret. If somebody out there is young and doesn't know what to do, go join the Coast Guard. If I'd known about the Coast Guard, when I probably would have joined even though I failed a couple of swim tests and failed every land nav course the Army ever gave me. Like, the Coast Guard's a great deal.
Yeah, I've got buds that did the Coast Guard thing. And my son went, he works for Boeing, he's on the flight line. And anyway, I didn't know what he was going to do. And I told him, I said, look, go to the military or go do the National Guard. I said, look, we're near the coast. You could go do the Coast Guard, do any of those things. And you can do your time if you want to re-enlist, become an officer, go to candidacy school, or you can make your decision. But you're still young. You go in and you put your 4 years in and do your time, and then you can figure out what you want to do. But I still say, I always tell people, if your son or daughter do not know what they're going to do, and when they're 18 and they graduate high school, go join the military. You got your whole life ahead of you, and you'll build brotherhood, and you're going to be an elite group, because, listen, we're a volunteer army these days. So, not everybody can go in there and say that, I did serve my time. And look, you were in the history books, with what you did over there, hanging in the hangar for a couple of months. But that's the way it goes. You plan, you wait, they pull the trigger, boom, you go in, and then you leave. And job well done. So thank you so much once again for your service. We thoroughly appreciate it. So well, let's talk about as you came in, because I remember the 08 crash. It was 08, 09, 010. It was it was an amazing thing. I mean, I can go back and look at where, like I said, I was born in '63. So I remember when I was growing up with the oil embargo, and you could only get gas in the States, on even or odd days. And we had gas down at our scrap. My family's been in construction since 1888. So fifth, sixth generation, we're in demolition and recycling. That's what we did. We knew we were doing sustainability before that was even a word. All right. We were in junk. It was another, one man's junk is another person's gold, as far as we were concerned. So I did my time in the scrap yard, and I shoveled asbestos. I laid railroad tracks. All the grandsons. I grew up outside of Philadelphia in Pottstown, about 15 minutes from west of Valley Forge. So when you got your license at 16, you had to go work in the scrap yard if you were a grandson. That was just the way it was. And my uncle Frank, he was the superintendent. He was like a drill sergeant. If you know what I mean. I mean, he was one tough son of a gun, and you better be on time. And I had to do all the OSHA stuff, at the end of the day, wash all the lead off. But it was an exciting time, because, a lot of my friends, they were just doing the gig and I was just doing hard labor. And but I appreciated it. I still have my erector set that I built all sorts of stuff way back when. And I was going to go to Valley Forge Military Academy. I ended up going to, prep school in New Jersey. And if I had to do it over, when I went to University of Denver, I would have done the ROTC. That's probably what I should have done. And, some of my friends were National Guard, and, but looking back from the oil embargo in 63, and then out in Denver, when I was in there in the 80s, the recession kind of hit. Interest rates were 18% for a home. People think 8% is high. I'm like, yeah, in the 80s it was 18%, and you had to have 20% down. There was none of this stuff that's been going on over the last couple of years. And then you came into the 90s, and then the internet, the bubble. 9/11, I was in New York, and ended up driving home, uh and then through that first year, and then the housing crisis. The economy just fell off the cliff. And but it wasn't like 9/11, because things were still open, people were still flying. It was just an awful time. And then the economy came back, and now over the last 3 years, that was basically I don't even, it was the twilight zone, because no one knew what was going on, and you just didn't know. And you had to be very flexible. And so when I look back at all the things, but I learned so much from all of those episodes that happened, that as I look back, and I try to tell my son, he's 23, he just turned 24. But I try to tell him, look, life's a really a roller coaster. You're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. You got to roll with the punches, but you got to stay positive, because before it gets better, it's probably going to get worse, or vice versa. And it's not, it's not if the glass is half full, it's half empty. Hey, you have a glass in your hand. That's the magic of it. And I had someone on my podcast that told me that a couple of weeks back, and it really hit home with me. I'm like, I'm just glad to have the glass in my hand. That way I can actually choose the way that I want to look at it. Just think, if you didn't even have that, you couldn't even use that quote. So talk about, as you're choosing to get back into real estate, and the mortgage kinds of things and so forth. Talk about the last 2 years, how you weathered the storm, and like lessons learned that some of our listeners out there, might, find some knowledge nuggets to apply themselves, as far as your business goes.
Sure. So, where a lot of the economy struggled over that 3-year period, what you find is real estate boomed. And there were, for that, when things first started to happen, a lot of people shut themselves in their homes, where I had spent the first 6 months of 2020 prospecting and I'd done maybe $2 million worth of volume, which is not a lot of volume. And so, because I showed through everything, I never took a day off. I masked up and gloved up and did what I needed to do. And I actually ended up having one of my best years in real estate. I closed 37 deals in 2020, did about $14-15 million worth of volume. I mean, really had a banner year. And the same in 2021, we had excellent years. And it was really just because when everybody else was, taking the time, whether they needed to or not, and a lot of people were relaxing and drinking more and doing all that. I just embraced the grind and never stopped working. I never, and it was kind of a shame, because I remember like having the freeways to myself for 6 months and being able to drive like 100 miles an hour everywhere I went. Cops didn't care. It was the wild, wild west. And I remember the day I pulled out and all the traffic was back, and I was like, oh, I kind of miss this open, having the freeways open to just me and like 3 other cars.
Hey, for those of you who haven't been in Denver, they definitely have rush hour, okay? And whether it's I-25 or 225 or I-70, depending on where you are, it's brutal. Like, I'm in Atlanta, and it's the LA of the South. So we're talking, 8-10 lanes on both sides of the highway, and it can be bumper to bumper. But when you're so right, when the roller coaster started in March of 2020, everybody was home, there was no traffic. And we were kind of still open here in Georgia. It really depended on what state you were in, depending, basically, delegated, what was happening. But there was no traffic, and a lot of people were staying home. I mean, the first thing that I did, I went and got some lumber, and I went and redid my deck. And I told my son, I go, look, man, we're going to do this ourselves. I'm not paying someone to do it, And he was like, why aren't you a contractor? I'm like, I come from a construction family, he's like, how do you know how to do all this stuff? I'm like, making mistakes when I was young and learning, and I just did it. So we redid the deck, and we redid some other things, and we found a piece of land up on the lake that was finding a little lake lot with a boat dock, and a permit was like a needle in a haystack. And so when I look back at 2020, it was, I'll tell you, in the beginning of 2020, there was low unemployment, cranes everywhere, building. I mean, the country was just booming. And then all of a sudden, March comes in, the NCAA Final Four gets canceled. I was going to that weekend in the middle of March after Tom Hanks got the bug, and everything got shut down. I was going to Ohio State to watch my DU Pios play in the Horseshoe, and that game got canceled. And then kind of a lot of people had to make some decisions on what they were going to do, and you really had to be flexible and act very quickly. I don't like using the word pivot because I've just heard it way too much. I just look back at just myself. I had just had my 10th anniversary event and put my issue out, and then I was a print face-to-face guy, and my whole world was locked down. So I spent a lot of sleepless nights in April going, oh my God, what am I going to do? And my editor, my artist, like, let's go digital. We have a digital magazine. We have a ton of content. Let's just go that route. We were bi-monthly, and so we did 6 issues a year. So in May, we put out the digital issue, and I did a very, very, very small press run. But then by the time August 2021 came around, we were going to make the announcement. We were going to go 100% digital, and we just made the decision then to make the announcement. And I haven't looked back. I don't miss the post office. I don't miss the printer. I don't miss any of that stuff. And to be honest with you, I had we get millions of people that hit our website now and consume content. I'm a completely different company than I was 3 years ago. I'm still a manufacturer, construction guy. I mean, I build a magazine every month, but before I used to paper, ink, postage, and all these subcontractors that got this down. Now I do it digitally with software, et cetera, but I'm still a builder. So every month I can look back, look and say, hey, I built that. But the biggest thing was that everybody was on the web. There were 8 billion people on the planet. And so I never had 1 million people hitting my website. So as we started doing more content and more things on the web, just like this podcast, I had bought my microphone. I was going to go do construction interviews out on the job sites and interview PMs or the owners on why they chose that site and how it was going. And then I couldn't do any of that. So I just started doing these things digitally. And now I don't know how many episodes I've done, but we had hundreds and hundreds of videos from all of our events over the years. And but now, we get about 2.5 million people a month that hit our website, and they come back because, we have good content. But the biggest thing was before March of 2020, we just used to put construction related real estate, facilities, development, that kind of stuff up there. But I think a lot of people over the 3 years, they found out there's more to life than just work. And so we put a lot more stuff on there, how to buy, how to choose the right home, how to buy the right phone for yourself, how to choose the right insurance, all of these different things that people, that they never thought about. They had time to think about it. And just like you said, I had talked to so many people that had banner years over the last couple of years, just because they kind of had that right mindset and they went for it, while some people just sat back, and then they don't want to come back to work, which is why we have the labor shortage. And so kudos to yourself that you had that mentality. And boy, I would have loved to seen I-25 with no traffic on it, and the police going, hey, go for it, bud, no one's out there. I mean, that's an amazing story, not having any traffic, during no matter what time of day it was. So we'll keep talking about, so you had your banner year and you went through the following year, and obviously you were out there, but were people in your office, or were they hybrid, or how did that all work?
No, we learned as a brokerage. I mean, going through that, we just learned that we used to do in-person meetings, our corporate brokerage. So I own a franchise, and back then I worked for corporate, and there's probably 100, 150 agents at corporate. And we used to get 5-10 people into a meeting than an in-person meeting. And so during that time period, we did like you did. We moved everything online. We used GoToMeeting kind of like Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
in order to bring the brokerage together. And we've actually continued that all the way through today. And now we get 40-50% of the brokerage on meetings every single day, because it's much easier just to, dial in from the home or dial in from the road. So I mean, it's kind of this weird thing where this bad thing happened, and it propelled, for a lot of real estate, it propelled us into the next level of doing what we were doing because of the lessons learned. And people are real estate agents because they don't want to go into an office. And so it's really nice to be able to, to do the things you need to do from home. Now, I'm an office rat. Like, I get up, I'm at the office by 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm usually here till 7 o'clock at night. I know me there at home. I've got my Xbox, my dog, my kid. Like, there's nothing that's going to keep me working. So I've got to come into the office. I know me. But for a lot of people, they love working from home, and it allows them the ability to do that. And I think for most agents, they kind of saw that same thing where, and business has definitely slowed down this year as interest rates have gone up. Business has slowed, but it's still at a pace where, we're expecting next year that hopefully interest rates come down a little bit and business is going to pick back up. And I do some other, like some investing, some wholesaling stuff on the side that drives revenue. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how everything affects your business, and yet as long as you stay focused and paying attention to things, that you're always able to drive that business forward.
When I look back at, from a real estate perspective, I've been in Atlanta since '92. So I was here before the Olympics. I saw, Home Depot was building 140 stores a year, and I saw all this stuff get built, around the city. I'm just another Yankee living in the South. And, but this was my third house I was in. We were there almost 17 years. And my son was graduating. He went to FA mechanic school to get his A&P license. And, that's what he wanted to do, work with his hands, which I was psyched, because we need the skilled labor out there no matter what we're doing. And so we had our house up for sale, and we got a bit, we had some bids on it. And then one of the contracts fell out, and I told my wife, I go, look, we need to finish the basement. And so we took it off the market. And my wife's an interior designer, residential contractor. So, and we have a federal contracting business too, minority owned, she's, that's just the way that we set it up. So, but anyway, we're still in construction. So I said, look, we'll redo the basement. We'll do it ourselves, and then we'll put it back on the market. But what the crazy thing was after we finished the house, I told her, so look, we bought the piece of land up on the lake as our empty nester house to build. And we needed to find a home to live, and we wanted to live as close as to the lot as we could, so we could keep an eye on things and be there, versus making an hour drives to it every day. And finding a house to live in was the most painful thing to go, because we would go, I think I lost out on about 25 or 30 homes. We would get there, and before you'd even get there, there'd be an offer on it. And if you didn't have cash, you weren't getting that house. And literally one by one, and I finally and we have 4 dogs, so I couldn't rent. My wife's a rescuer, for the animals. And I told her, I said, look, we're going to be living, in a tent, or somewhere in the middle of Georgia, because, we can't find a house. And then finally, we found a home that was, fairly close to where we were living. And I said, do whatever you need to do. It's on a cul-de-sac. It has a fence that we can have for the dogs, and just do whatever. So we had to spend over $30,000 over the asking price. And there were, I think, 45 people bidding on that house. I had to buy the house without an inspection as is. It was only about 5 or 6 years old. So I really wasn't concerned about, too much going wrong with it. But I mean, it was agonizing trying to find a house. My wife would sit at night, and look at her phone and on Zillow, and we would see a house that would go up on the market, and before we even woke up in the morning, there was under contract on it. You couldn't find a house, and I didn't even know where these people were going that were selling their homes, because every other state that you would go to, whether it was Texas or Florida or wherever you were moving, everything, that the real estate market was just absolutely bonkers. And finding a home was the most agonizing thing that I think I ever went with. But then finally we got it, and and then someone put an offer on a home, and it it was the greatest thing that I had, like a whole weight lifted off when we got rid of the trophy house, and had a great time there. But listen, we were there 17 years. I knew that we had 3 AC units. I knew the roof was going to have to get fixed eventually, and all these other things if you stay there. And I was like, look, we had a great time. Let's just go out and we'll build our empty nester and we'll have a good time there and finish our life out. And but it was just crazy, the real estate market here. And I was talked to friends, all over the country, and they, people were moving and selling their homes, and they were all going through the same thing. I mean, prices were up, you were making money, but the inventory was low, and things were just going so quick. And if you didn't know, I forget what the real estate term is, like one in the pocket or whatever, a listing that's that you don't
listing.
Pocket listing. Thank you. I was having a a brain gig. Anyway, that pocket listing, if you didn't know that was happening, it was very, very tough to find a home. And we were just, timing in business is everything. I always say that. And but when we got into this house, when we went to the closing sign, I was like, oh my God, what a relief. Got rid of the other house. We have a place to live, and the land's not going anywhere. And now interest rate, it's like, do I want to build at 8% with a construction loan? Shoot, I have no idea. We have our plans done, and I'm getting my perk test done because we're near the lake. You got to deal with the DNR and so forth. But all in all, we've been kind of sitting back, and now I'm like, well, do I want to wait? I don't know if I'll get the sticks done before the end, the sticks and the framing done and make it dry so I can go through the rest of the winter with the electrical and all that. Maybe I'll just wait. And, the economy, who knows what's going to happen. I think corporate real estate is the biggest unknown because the occupancy rate is, I'm in the commercial sector, so I know that the occupancy rate in some of these cities is way down. And a lot of those buildings are, who knows what they're going to be able to do with them. From a renovation point of view, as a reuse project, et cetera. And I think that's probably one of I'm going to use the word scary, as if, because before we got on, we were talking about, Denver being empty. So when I went to DU 81 to 85, I remember that down to the oil bust, you come from an oil family, so you can appreciate this. The oil bust happened in the early 80s, and Denver had just built all these buildings downtown, and there was no one in them. It was like a ghost city. They were empty. Now they're full. I mean, I go back there. I mean, they built a new stadium and all this stuff. But when I was there, it was empty down there. And they had all these huge buildings that they had built. And the bus just drove everything away. And inflation, you had high interest rates and all of this stuff that was going on. And when I look back at it, it wasn't scary, but everybody was kind of on edge. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you were, listen, you jumped out of planes, which I totally give you credit, that you're sitting there waiting for the green light to go on. There's still some butterflies going on. It was that same kind of feeling in the mid 80s that you really didn't know what was going to happen. And, but you were prepared for it. You just didn't know what was going to happen. And that was kind of the edge that I felt back then. And they didn't make it easy buying a house the way that they've done it, over the last, 10 years. And so one of the other things, there are good real estate people and there are really lazy ones. And that was the one thing that I saw when we were selling our house. The people that really took pride in what they did, whether you were the listing agent or the person opening the lockbox and all that kind of stuff, or would come home or get your home ready, they would, maybe put some ice and some sodas and whatever, just the little things that can make people feel more comfortable when they're going to go buy probably the biggest investment that they're, other than a car, that they're going to purchase in their life. It's all those little things that can actually help you make the sale. And that goes with anything. Am I right about that or not? I mean, you're a real estate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's interesting you talked about the commercial real estate because a lot of people don't understand that for a lot of commercial real estate, they're bought with a balloon loan. And so in the next, I think it's 2024, there's trillions of dollars of balloon notes that are due. And because of the occupancy rates, I don't know that those commercial buildings are going to appraise to refinance. And I mean, it could equivocate to 2008, but in the commercial real estate space, like it is something that is potential of being pretty devastating to sectors of the economy, which is, it's something that's worth following. And it also means right now you can get a really good deal on commercial real estate if you are somebody in an investment group or you've got cash. I mean, now's a great time to be contacting commercial real estate owners because they can still get out and not have to deal with a lot of the problems that are coming. So it is a great time to get opportunities in commercial real estate.
There are firms out there that right now their balloon payments are, even though next year is where the big hurrah is going to come in, where everything's due. But just this past year, stuff that I've read online or stuff that, I'm in media, so I got press releases all the time. Sure. But I know people, there are companies big companies that have just turned the keys over and said, look, I can't afford to make this payment right now. And they're just walking away and let the bank deal with it. And then the bank doesn't, they got to figure out how they're going to eat that because it's on their books. It's on their ledger. So it really is. And when I heard that occupancy rate was less than 50%, it was very scary. I look at New York as an example, and I'm from there, so no one take that a bit against me or not, but I grew up there, went to public school and the whole bit. But New York, we did an event, a reception up there in May. And people said, look, and we have an event coming up at the end of this month in New York. And they said, look, if you do an event in New York, don't do it on Monday and don't do it on Friday because no one's in the city. And they're only coming in, if they're hybrids, they're only coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, to come in and do the office. And I asked a lot of people, how do you do it? Do you come in one day or do you stay at home or do you just pick your time when you're coming in? And it varied. But they all said that, the city, it's just not full the way it was. And that goes with any city. I don't care if it's Texas or what have you. That corporate real estate thing is a very, very dicey thing that's coming down the pike. If you haven't read about it, go and Google it because it's a serious thing that's going to come in. And hopefully the financial guys that are in corporate real estate will figure out the best way to solve that problem. But you got a huge note and you got no one renting space and so forth. You're going to have to be very creative to get people to go. And you're exactly right. If you have cash out there, oh my God, you should go. You could probably find some serious bargains if you were looking for a new office, or maybe you're looking for to downsize for another. It's big and small. All of these people are affected by this thing, and it's there's a lot of other things that you got to worry about. But I always bring up the corporate real estate because it's like this. It's like the hurricane out in the ocean, and it's out there. You just don't know when it's going to hit and where it's going to go, but it's coming and you just don't know how bad it's going to be. And so you're in real estate. So I'm glad that that you're on the same page as me because I look at it and I'm looking at all of this stuff, when I go on, the road and look at different cities, I'm always looking and see what the vibe is. And, I'll talk to some real estate people and they will all say, yeah, this is the big thing that's coming down the pike and it's going to be here before you know it. But if you have cash, you can you can always make a positive out of a negative, So if you do have cash, whether it's in the residential side or on the corporate side, there are a lot of deals out there. And if you wanted to learn it and get into real estate, here's your opportunity because there's going to be plenty of opportunities out there. You just got to go find the right one for you to fit that mold. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to be really good at underwriting a deal, right? Knowing what makes something a good deal and what doesn't. And I recommend if you're new to investing in real estate, join a real estate mastermind. It'll cost you a little bit of money, but find a good mastermind. I belong to a great group called the $1 Billion Boardroom. It's run by a guy Javi, does a fantastic job. It's a great group of people, but there's thousands of real estate masterminds out there. Surround yourself with people who know more than you, and then just follow their path, right? You don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. Like, wheels roll, that's what they do. So just find somebody who's already rolling the wheel and get on board.
I mean, what's the occupancy right now in Denver? I mean, is it above 50 or is it teetering over there? My cousin lives in downtown Denver, and he just says, renting an apartment is just unbelievably expensive, or just in general, real estate is just boomed. And so you're there.
Yeah, I think we have a really high occupancy rate, but what we've seen is a lot of companies downsizing, right? So, you used to rent space for 100 people, and you realize I really only need space for 20. And so what you see is a lot of people shrinking the size of their office space, and getting into smaller notes, getting into smaller spaces. So Denver is one of those markets that, because so many people move here, we tend to have very little openings. But even now we see a lot of, like shopping malls and shopping centers, and, a lot of for sale signs, a lot of vacancy signs on things that used to be full. So, I mean, I think it's hitting the whole country in a similar way. I think one of the really smart things that people are doing is they're repurposing spaces, finding new ways to use spaces that used to do old things. And I think that's going to be really the next wave. A lot of people are turning spaces into like remote workspaces where you can just, kind of like WeWork, where you can just come in, rent a little office, and then go. So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing some really smart things with old spaces to get new money out of them.
I'll tell you one of the most amazing things. Like I said, I went to DU in the 80s, and we did an event. I hadn't been out there in a while, and we did a gig down in Colorado Springs. So we flew into the airport, DIA. Stapleton was long gone, and drove down I-25. And between Denver and Colorado Springs, when I was there, was just rolling hills of green, farmland, and out there in the country, I mean, there was nothing there. And then when we went to this event, at the Biltmore, we're driving down there. I'm telling people, I'm like, oh my God, they got the train. And, Aurora was a little dinky city, and now it's, it's a humongous, so many thousands of people, Centennial, it was just like a, one street town, if that, but they have the train and everything was built up. So actually Colorado Springs, and which is probably about an hour and a half, depending on where you're going from Denver down to Sea Springs, but it's basically just one big corridor now that's just been built. And it's just amazing to see, just like skiing. Like I could, the Denver drive ups, for the mountains on the weekends. You'd still have to get up early, but now you got to get up about 4:30 in the morning to beat the traffic if you're going up there on the weekends. And still the highway's only a couple of lanes wide, so you just put more cars on it, you're gonna get into traffic. So it really is amazing to see how much has been built from a real estate perspective, just between Sea Springs and Denver. And then as you get into the foothills and so forth, some of the sleepy towns, Idaho Springs and all that, Glenwood Springs, they still are in there, but there's still so much building that's been done. The urban sprawl, and and I think they've done it right in Colorado. I think they have, in all aspects, even though, it can get out of control. I think they've done a good job as far as, blending. But listen, you can't control the, what's going on right now in the corporate side of things. And like I said, it's there for the taking. So if you're thinking about real estate, and like Scott said, join a mastermind gig. I mean, you can learn from people that have been through the ringer, and you can hang on their coattails, and what they've done. If it's not broken, don't fix it, and do what they did, and you'll make some money too. And timing in business is everything. Cash is king. So if you've got cash and you're looking to become a landlord and so forth, or like Scott said, if you're looking to downsize, there's so many properties that are going to become available. And listen, the banks, they don't want them on their ledger sheet. They want you to take it. So be creative, and you could probably land something really, really cool and become a real estate tycoon. I could think of other things that you could do, but hey, it's there for the taking right now. So what are some of the coolest things that you've seen over the last year, from from your own perspective, that you've done, as far as sales go, or helping people?
Yeah. So, we've done some really cool deals. We've found ways I've spent a lot of time in the last few months finding people who had distressed properties and helping them get out of them and still make some money, which is nice. I think being able to help people is the most important thing. It's interesting. You talked earlier about where, everybody was going above asking price, we're still seeing multiple offers on a lot of properties. But back then, the difference was that, someone was getting $50,000 over asking for a sale, but they were then taking that $50,000 over asking and putting it towards that buy, right? So every single time a house sold, now you had a cash heavy buyer going out there that people that didn't have cash were competing against, which made it really hard, mostly for first time home buyers. If you were a list buy, your life wasn't that hard. You were just reinvesting that money into the new property. Where if you were a first time home buyer, it was really tough. And so in the last year, first time home buyers have really been able to get back into the market just because it's been a little bit less competitive. Our inventory was down at the peak to about 2,500 properties. We had, in a really healthy buyer's market here in Denver, we've got 25 to 30,000 properties on the market. Over 2020 and 2021, we got down to about 2,500. Now we're back up to about 6,000. So it's rebounding, but it's still in a place where sellers get a good deal. Buyers are still able to get a good deal. So it's in a nice place. I think interest rates hopefully next year are going to come down and we'll see some good things, but you never know until it happens.
Yeah, when we got this house, the people that were selling the homes, they didn't even look. If you were getting a mortgage, they didn't even want to talk to you. They just wanted to talk to the cash guys because it was a much easier close. You didn't have to deal with things, and they kind of drove. Hey, this is the way I'm selling the house. Take it or leave it. I got 50 other people that want this property, and it'll be sold by tomorrow morning. If you want it, this is the way it's going to go, and there's no negotiating. And it was definitely a seller's market. And I know some of my friends, that were out in California, and they just missed it where, everything was going, and then kind of it slowed down a little. And some people, they just missed that window of opportunity when everything was just, so fast and furious.
If you sold in 2019, you were kicking yourself, right? Like if you sold in 2018 or 2019, and that's when some people had to sell, but you look back and you're like, oh, if I just held on another year, I would have made $75,000 or $100,000 more selling the same house.
Yeah. Well, we were in that same boat in December of 2020. We were going to sell our house, and then it was a couple that came up from Dallas, an older couple, and it was a 3-story house. We didn't need all that space, but the bottom line is they were an older couple. I was like, why are these people buying, stairs? You don't want stairs when you get older. And so I didn't understand it, but then, they canceled on a Saturday night. And that's when I told my wife, we bought the house. It was when it was a year and a half old. It was a real estate guy that had built it. And so he had stubbed everything out in the basement, and he had one area, his office was had drywall up, but the rest of it was just all stubbed out. And plumbing, electrical. So I just told my wife, I said, look, let's just take it off the market. We'll put a basement in. And in Georgia, everybody's got a basement. It's just the way it is. And because of tornadoes, the sirens go off, you take cover. And so we did the basement, and we added almost another 2,200 square feet. And but if we would have sold it in 2020 in that December, in a year's time, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars extra that we added to the kitty. And even though when you get up into that, a little higher income, people are a little more finicky with their money because they're successful and they're careful with it versus, a smaller home and not as large of it as an investment. But we had it on the market for a couple of months, and finally, they went with it. And but it was if we would have sold it, we definitely wouldn't have done as well as we did. And but who knew? I was just like, let's just do the thing. We'll finish the basement in 6 months. We'll do it ourselves, and we'll put it up on the market. And so we finished. I think we put it up in like in the end of August. People here in the South, we go to school. They start in the beginning of August. So if you're going to sell a house, you got to do it, May through the summer so they can get in their schools. And these people were local. They just wanted they had a couple of kids, and they wanted a bigger house. They wanted to put a pool in, and we were just lucky we had a big lot in the subdivision that we were in. But it was just, when you look back, even my wife, she's like, man, we were lucky we didn't sell that house, because if we would have sold it back then, you're right, we would have been kicking ourselves. And even now, like, she'll look at our old house and what it's appraised for, and she's like, oh, it's there. I'm like, you know what, don't worry about it, because as long as the lake has water, that land is only going up, because they're not giving out any more boat permits, dock permits. So I don't care about that house. Let them deal with, I'm glad they bought it. I hope they're happy, and but we had a good time there. Everything, good things have to come to an end eventually. But it really was a crazy, crazy time. But people made a killing, and some of the real estate agents, our agent, just trying to get her to come over. She had more listings, you had to be hot on the phone or looking at your stuff, because the minute that listing, you want to get that thing so you can sell it, because someone else is going to be, or there'll be 20 other brokers or agents that want to list it or show it. And it was just crazy. So if anybody wanted to bounce some questions off, whether it's, on the residential side or the corporate side, or just real estate in general, or how you got into masterminds and learned, how would they reach out to you?
Yeah, the easiest way is my cell phone, 720-252-7037. I'm that guy that always answers his phone. So you can call me. You can email me at Scott@YouFirst, and it's not the word first, it's the number 1ST, like first place. So Scott@YOU, the numeric 1, S like Sam, T like Tom.com. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me, is either email or phone.
So listen, if you're out there and you want to play in the real estate game, residentially or on the corporate, industrial, whatever it might be, reach out to Scott. Bounce some things off him. He's part of a mastermind, and he'll help you kind of guide you through the turbulent waters that are coming down the pike. And listen, if you don't know, ask, and then you'll know. And that's the kind of the way that I always think about it. Listen, if someone wants to reach me, I'm at David C. at CCR hyphen or small dash and then mag.com. Listen, Scott got on here because his publicist reached out to me, and that's how he got on the show. So if you want to be a guest on here, just reach out to me. I answer everything with a TAT, that's turnaround time, probably within, 48 hours, I'll come back to you. If you've got, any press releases or anything that you want to get out there, out on the wild, wild west of the web, listen, it's very tough getting in the magazine, but we've got all the social media programs. We post stuff every day. It could be an anniversary for your company. It could be a personnel announcement. It could be a charity golf tournament. We look at everything. So don't judge the book by its cover, what you're going to send it. Let me do that, because we look at everything and we post stuff all day long. And it's win-win. We post it, we say in the URL, you share it. It's good for our SEO, which is search engine optimization. And, it's a win-win. So, send us up. And I always tell people, it's like playing the lottery. If you don't buy a ticket, you can't win. If you don't send me something, I can't publish it or put it on one of the, in the magazine or on the social media. So, just, it could be anything. We look at everything. And one of the most amazing things is, before the roller coaster started in March of 2020, I used to just put the construction stuff up there. But now I put all sorts of stuff in there. You want to learn about hair extensions, whether you're a guy or a girl? Hey, I got copy on there that you can learn about that stuff. If you want to learn about real estate, I have all sorts of stuff that's on there, and we put it out there for consumption. We've become a destinations site of mainly construction, design, build, real estate, but a lot of other stuff that you would find. Even crypto's on there. I've put all sorts of stuff on there. So let me be the judge, and I swear I'll come back to you, or my digital specialist will come back to you, and we'll get it posted for you. So any final thoughts, on as we go into the Q4 and finish up the year in 2023, leave a positive thought or phrase with our listeners out there?
I think the only positive thought that I keep in my head at all times is that I remember that I don't know anything, and the only way to learn anything is through hard work and effort. So if you think you're at, sometimes you think you're at the bottom of a mountain and you're actually at the edge of a cliff. So keep your head on a swivel and make sure that you surround yourself with a circle of people who are going to be honest with you and truthful. And always keep that next thing in mind, so you know where you're going.
I I've been in these digital classes for like the last year. So I did what you did. I joined a mastermind for, digital online marketing guys, because I became a digital magazine and I thought I knew everything. I didn't know jack after looking at these guys that have made millions of dollars on the web and have just hung onto their coattails. And I've done, I think, 3 classes. I've been in class for a year and now I'm putting everything together, and it's just been an amazing ride between AI, ChatGPT, Mind Journey, content. And listen, I've been a publisher for almost 25 years. I thought I knew about content. I didn't. All right. And you can teach an old dog new tricks, believe it or not. You can never be too old not to learn. The biggest thing is fear of technology and new ways of doing things. Listen, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to win and you're going to lose. But if you don't try, you're not going to find out. And if you do try, you're going to learn from your mistakes. And that's the best thing you can do, is make mistakes. Hopefully they're not bad, but you got to try and make mistakes because you're going to learn from them. And I always put things in, I've got my lacrosse sticks behind me. Listen, you could put a whole game plan together, and someone might get hurt and you got to scrap it because you're putting in other people. Just like the Buffaloes, they put a game plan together. I don't know if they maintained it. I know TCU probably had a game plan together, but they planned on winning that game, but they lost it. So in my game, you just have to be flexible. I just posted this thing up on my business page. It just said, just do it again. So in my book, just do it, action, and always move forward. But mindset, keep yourself positive, because that's the best thing. Negativity, get rid of it. People are negative around you, get rid of them. They're just bringing you down. Just stay positive, surround yourself with positive people. But joining one of these groups it was the best investment that I think I've ever done after a lot of things that just hang with people that are experts and learning from them. And then trying and learning how to do this stuff. It's just been an amazing. This last year, I go through a couple classes a week. I go downstairs and talk to my wife. I'm like, you're not going to believe what I just saw. It's mind blowing. I mean, I've left so much money on the table. I just wish I would have known this through my whole publishing career, what I've just learned, and now I can apply it. So, Scott, pleasure speaking with you. It's totally cool to see, a Denverite out there, go Donkeys, and go Pios, and, all that stuff. And hopefully you'll have a great fall season out there. For those of you who haven't been out in Colorado, the nicest time to be out there is in the fall, because the humidity kind of, the heat. And then we get into the season and the Rockies, and the leaves turn colors, and you really don't get the bright reds and all like you do in the Northeast. They're bright yellows and greens. The aspens turn. It's the most beautiful time of season before Christmas toes and so forth. So if you've never been out in the Rockies in the fall, make it a bucket list item, because it is just beautiful. It's God's country up there in the Rockies. I don't care where you go. It's just a beautiful time of year to go see it. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I'm a huge Niners fan, so go Niners.
Yeah, go Niners. Listen, I'm here in the South. Go ugly, go Birds, the ugly birds, down here in Atlanta. Who knows what's going to happen? So with that said, Scott, say goodbye from the Mile High City.
See y'all later. And David, thanks again for having me, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to bring me onto your podcast. I know you didn't have to, and I value the time. So thank you.
No, listen, hey, thank your publicist. She reached out to me, and actually, Jenny, I've had a couple of other clients on here, and so all that in general, it's been a pleasure. Couple things before I leave. Okay, number one, I want you to hit the like button. Okay, I'm a YouTuber guy. We want to help people find this episode on Scott out there, and make the algorithms work. So hit the like button. Number two, if you're out there on a construction site, we want you to be safe. We want you to get home so you can see your kids, your dog, and your family, and you can go home and get up and do it again the following day. All right. And number three, it's still hot out there. Okay. The temps are going to cool off here, but it's still really hot. I don't care where you are. So drink lots of water and stay hydrated, because if you get dehydrated, get headaches, and that's when, make mistakes and, accidents occur. So like I said, be safe, drink lots of water. All right. And you can take that to the bank. So with that said, I'm going to sign off from Sugar Hill, which is just below the Beaufort Dam in Lake Lanier, about probably 25, 30 miles north of downtown Atlanta, which is the LA of the South. And Scott already said goodbye from the Mile High City. And Scott, if I come out to Denver, I want to meet you in person. All right. And, we'll go to lunch. We'll get some grub and, talk, whatever, military stuff. So I don't care. I'll talk about anything. So, and with that said, everybody, have a great rest of the week and have a great Q4. And we will see you all next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Scott, thank you so much. You're the best.
Thanks.
And thank you for your service. We appreciate that.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next time, guys. Ciao.